each one of these things ties to the other in a way where the whole brings far more to us as an individual and a collective than any one branch or root ever could. My name's Kirk, and I'm the program director of Mountain Trek. I'd like to take a bit of your time and talk about our philosophy on balanced health. I'm going to use a little metaphor, which is a tree, which for us is a sign of vitality, and ultimately that's a goal for our program in helping people regain vitality through balanced health. Balanced health is a collection of things in health. It's not just about calories in and calories out. There's all kinds of things that we need to do to be in balanced health in order for us to have our hormones become balanced and to raise our metabolism. And this can happen at any time in our life. It's fortunate that our bodies are so resilient that we could start having balanced health in our 60s, 70s, or 80s and still reclaim things like muscle and bone and sleep and appetite and all kinds of things. I'm going to give you just a cursory taste of the 5 paths, or what we call the 5 branches of balanced health in our balanced health tree, and also talk a little bit about what supports those 5 paths in the roots of the tree. The first one is obvious. We've been looking at nutrition really since the turn of the 1900s. And so for us, nutrition is the first branch of balanced health. It's what brings all the building blocks into the body. For us, nutrition is about 2 primary things. Nutrification of all of the cells of the brain and the body. So that's getting all of the minerals, vitamins, phytonutrients, antioxidants, everything that we need for building blocks to run efficiently. And secondly, it's about fuel. So getting enough calories and the right kinds of calories through the day to give the energy to the body while it's moving and give the energy to the brain while it's thinking at work. And so that basically we run optimally. That's the purpose of nutrition. In our program, we believe in eating about every 3-ish hours through the waking day. We believe in taking some of dinner's calories, which for many of us in North America is the largest meal of the day. We would take about 1/3 of those calories and spread them back across the day, making sure that we break the fast first thing in the morning within about 30 minutes of rising. Have a snack with some protein and maybe some fruit 3-ish hours later, partway through our workday. Then have a midday break and have a lunch, refueling the body and the brain. And then maybe again an afternoon snack while our attention span is depleting and our blood sugars are dropping, and we feel that afternoon kind of lull to help bring us back up with a bit of glucose so that we can continue performing as best as we can at work to the end of the workday. Then have an early dinner. We believe in eating as early as possible in order to give a 12-hour break between dinner and breakfast for an intermittent fast. That intermittent fast, from our perspective, is about supporting the body's need for a process called autophagy. Autophagy is when the cell doesn't have to manage blood sugar coming to it, and it can stop the ATP cycle and focus on reconstruction and recycling and cleaning itself up and lowering inflammation. So taking a break between dinner and breakfast while we're sleeping is beneficial for the whole system in lowering inflammation. This whole approach to a balanced health focus is indeed about lowering inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of 90% of the illnesses in our world right now, in our society. According to the Mayo Clinic, stress being one of the major causes of inflammation, but also you'll see in the other aspects of health that we talk about, is if we can keep lowering inflammation through the day and the night, we will have less duress on our systems in the body, and we will have more flow more energy, more vitality. So having that break through the night of intermittent fasting helps lower inflammation. Feeding ourselves regularly through the day nourishes the body and the brain so that we can be productive at work. On the other side of the tree, calories in, and of course, typically we look at calories out. Most people would call this next aspect of health exercise. We call it movement. The word exercise really didn't exist before the 1980s. Most of us worked to get exercise right up our last 200,000 years until the 1980s. Before the 1980s, the only people going to gyms were really bodybuilders and boxers. Nobody went to a Zumba class after leaving the assembly line in Flint, Michigan. We only started exercise really when we started to sit for our work. And we realized with that much sitting that we were getting sick. We were storing more calories than we wanted, our inflammation levels went up, and our hormones got out of balance and our metabolism dropped. So we started everything from Jane Fonda step classes right through to CrossFit. And all of these things are really about movement, functional movement that humans would have done for the last 200,000 years in getting firewood, in hunting and gathering, in farming, and in the industrial age, standing on their feet and riveting things on an assembly line. Humans have really had the benefit of work as the main form of movement or exercise for the majority of our time on the planet. But this is not the case now. So now we need to incorporate movement specifically. And for most of us, that does come in the form of exercise. We believe that there's four main aspects to rounding out the functional aspects of our physical body's requirements. But underneath those four aspects, we have an umbrella that overarches that says that we need approximately 10,000 steps in a day. That movement to take a step is increasing circulation through the body, increasing oxygenation of the blood, moving blood and waste products through our filtration organs, helping us eliminate things that aren't beneficial for us. Movement is for circulation primarily. It pumps all of the waste products of our cellular metabolization through our kidneys and our liver and flushes everything out. If we sit chronically 14 plus hours a day, basically we are not squeezing through muscle contraction, the venous return, and the lymphatic drainage system to help purge things out of the body, waste products basically. So the first thing that we need to think about in terms of movement is making sure that we're walking a lot. So that's a whole mental shift. It means parking in the furthest parking stall when we go grocery shopping, not the closest. It means maybe going out for dinner, but parking 6 blocks from the restaurant, so we walk 6 blocks there and 6 blocks back. Maybe when you're working back in the office parts of the week, you have to go to the bathroom, you go 2 floors up instead of the washroom that's on your floor, gaining again more steps. It's a whole different concept to shift the urge to minimize effort to actually think that walking is one of the most helpful things we could do for ourselves. And it is. So it's not about losing weight or gaining muscle. Walking is for circulation. Underneath movement, we need strength training. If we do not keep pulling on the bones with our muscles, our body loses muscle. And after our peak age, chronologically around 28 to 30, we could be losing anywhere between half a pound to a pound of muscle a year. That's a lot of calorie burning furnace that we just are atrophying through non-use. The body will not keep things if they're not needed. It's just energy management. And if we are wasting muscle because we're not pulling and tugging and lifting and twisting and doing functional things like we used to for work, we are losing calorie burning cells in our body. The other thing that we can lose if we're not strength training through the rest of our life is bone. If we do not pull on the bones where the muscles are attached, we could take all the calcium, magnesium, vitamin D in the world, and it will not be absorbed in the bones unless the bones see the need to densify. And they only see that need through compaction and pulling with the muscles on the insertions in the bones. So strength training, hands down, has to be part of our ongoing life for balanced health. The other thing we need to do is maintain our core muscles. Now, the core is not just those big six packs that we see on the cover of magazines. It's all the stabilizing muscles, really from our tongue all the way down to the perineum in the bottom of our pelvis. All of those crossover muscles and stabilizing muscles along our back and across the front and the barrel of our body are holding us upright, holding our posture in a neutral stance, even when we're sitting or standing, so that we have flow through the system. We're engaged. We're not just loose and hanging. We're engaged and everything hangs off the skeleton better. So we have to do core work through our whole life as well. We've known that a lot of people, when they start to lose muscle, some of the first muscle that we atrophy and lose are the core muscles, the small stabilizing support muscles. And those are the things that cause us to collapse in posture and cause us to lose balance when we step off a curve. It's the core that stabilizes everything. And the core that holds that stabilization then also allows power to move through the abdomen and through our arms and our legs when we're doing any kind of activity, whether it's tennis or water skiing. The third component of overall physical health would be cardiovascular endurance. That's where we take the movement that we talked about in walking and pick it up a bit, where we start to having to breathe a bit more and have our heart rate goes up so that our lungs and heart working in concert become as potent as possible. When we can go into a cardiovascular endurance activity, we require more energy to sustain that activity than the last meal provided as blood sugar. And when we continue that cardiovascular activity for a long enough time and an intensity that's high enough, we can actually go right through from glucose from our last meal into glycogen that's stored in our muscles and liver from our last physical activity and into stored calories that have been stored in our fat cells. And this is how cardiovascular activity can help us find the right body composition. We want to maintain muscle, and we want to have the right percentage of body fat so that we're not putting pressure in our internal organs and increasing inflammation again. So that could be running, which a lot of people like because of the endorphins, but we're a little bit shy about once you get into midlife because of the pressure on joints. It could be speed walking. It could be biking. It could be hiking. It could be cross-country skiing. It could be working in a gym on some elliptical equipment. There's all kinds of activities that we can do to increase our cardiovascular output so that we keep a strong heart and lung combination and keep the amount of our visceral fat level at the right amount that we're not causing inflammatory responses. The fourth part of movement from our perspective is flexibility. So we can't just build muscle, we also have to lengthen muscle. If we just body build and build larger and larger muscle, we will get bound by that muscle building. So we have to include flexibility to make sure that we have full range of motion in all of our joints, even the ones that stay working hard in one position all day long. We need to make sure that we're getting joint rotation and muscle flexibility through our whole body so that we can hold that neutral spine and that neutral posture and have flow and painless, hopefully, life. So there's the calories in and the calories out. Now, with calories in, we're also getting all kinds of things coming in, things that our body doesn't want or need. We inhale and ingest and absorb more chemistry now than humans have ever had to deal with in the history of the planet. So we have to support our eliminatory system through detoxification. As I mentioned earlier, our liver filters toxins out of our bloodstream and our kidneys filter it. The liver filters the fat-soluble chemistry and the kidneys filter the water-soluble chemistry. Those chemicals that aren't supportive to us are then flushed out through our urine and our feces. We also release chemistry out through our breath if we're breathing deeply. And we also will release chemistry out through our skin, our largest eliminatory organ in the body, when we sweat enough. So we have 3 ways in: breath, ingestion, and absorption, because our skin is semi-permeable. It's actually 65% of anything that touches the skin goes through the epidermis and into the bloodstream. So all the lotions and underarm sprays and every cleaners and products that we use in our house, all of those things can absorb into our skin and into our body. And a lot of that chemical compounds in our world of cleaning and products that we use in our skin are not beneficial to our body. They're not beneficial to our brain, and they're disruptive often to our endocrine system, which is our hormonal system. And remember, we want to find balance in our hormonal system as part of being in balanced health. The 4 ways out of the body are urine, feces, breath, and sweat. So we're designed to take things in and move them out. But when we don't move enough, we don't breathe deeply. When we don't move enough, we don't sweat enough. When we don't move enough, we're not pumping things through the filtering organs and helping them get out of the body. And when we're not bending and twisting and lifting, we're not massaging our internal organs enough to get enough bowel movements frequently enough to get chemistry out of the body. I'll just give you a simple example. And this statistic is more than 10 years old, so it's probably worse now. The FDA has approved for us, for digestion, over 3,000 food chemical compounds in our food-produced world. We're talking about things that color food, that emulsify food, that stabilize food, that preserve food, not to mention the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides in the growing of food. In all of the factories that are making the majority of the food, if you know it's a majority when you walk into any grocery store, and the majority of all the products that we can buy are packaged, that is produced food. It is full of chemical compounds, and not all of it is beneficial for our body. Not to mention the air that we breathe in the cities, not to mention, like I mentioned, the things that we put on our skin. We have a lot of chemicals coming into our body. Even something as banal as filling up our gas tank at the gas station, we're breathing in vaporized nickel and cadmium, 2 heavy metals that go straight into our bone marrow. There is so much chemistry that we have to include detoxification, or at least the support of the eliminatory system, as part of balanced health. It has to be something that we have to do for our body and brain's best interest. Now, that could be including drinking more water so that we're helping the kidneys flush. It could be making sure that we're getting probiotics and prebiotics and enough movement so that we're averaging at least a bowel movement a day, if not what we're designed for, 2 to 3 a day, so that we're helping things move out. It might include going to a sauna or a steam once in a while and purging through your sweat glands. It may include working with a professional and doing a deeper cleanse of your liver or your colon, or doing a fast of some kind. These things we would encourage you do with a professional, though, not just from some book that you read or some YouTube that you watch. Everybody's body's different. All of us are on different hormones and different medications, and that should be all orchestrated into something deeper in terms of deeper cleansing of the body. On the other side of the tree with movement is an underrated aspect of our health until very recently, and that's sleep. Sleep hygiene is now a big part of what we see. It's in apps, we see it in all kinds of lectures on TED Talks and everything. Sleep has really only been studied for about 25 years. It started off in Scandinavia, where they were concerned with shift worker health. And we started to look at why shift workers were living 10 years less on average than daytime workers. And from that, we learned about the circadian rhythm, the circadian inner clock of body and brain, and everything from our sleep cycles to our gastrointestinal cycles, all of that, and hormonal cycles is all dialed from the sun, hence circa, the circle that all of life revolves around. It isn't just the plant world that revolves around the sun, it's also the animal world as well. And so we have to give a nod to how we align to the natural world rather than the human clock-based world if we want to have fully balanced health. So part of our effort is to make sure that we're helping people break through insomnia through different lifestyle adjustments so that people can come to the pillow at bedtime with their nervous system ready for sleep, with their mind ready for sleep, with their digestive system ready for sleep, so that they can go right into deep sleep. The two main sleeps are deep non-REM sleep and REM sleep. And we believe that we need basically 7 to 9 hours as an adult Homo sapien of deep sleep, and both of those two qualities to be in balanced health. You could be a marathoner with 12% body fat, but if you're only sleeping on average 6 hours a night, you're not in balanced health. Balanced health is not about the six-pack. Balanced health is including everything that has to do with hormonal balance and lowering inflammation and raising metabolism. The last branch of our tree is probably, and that's why it's at the top, is the most paramount. This is our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. The body actually follows what we do here. How we support our anxiety or not, how we support our connection or not, has everything to do with how we take care of ourselves and each other. So we know that we have to attend to making sure that we're working with our mind, our two minds, which we'll talk about in another one of our lecture series. We have to know that we're working with relationship in a way that we feel supported and not alone, and then under the duress of anxiety and potential depression. Mental and emotional health is equally, if not more important than physical health. What happens here comes through our nervous system, and then that affects all of our hormones and all of our organs. We have to heal trauma from our past. We have to find tranquility and peace and joy in our life. It can't just be about performance and striving. We have to have balance mentally and emotionally. And we also have to have context for who we are, what our purpose is, how do we fit into this phantasmagorical thing we call life. That's the spiritual side. What happens when we die? What am I doing here? What are my gifts? Am I living my purpose? These are the existential questions that are also very important for us to include in balanced health, or else we just think we're a body, and then we just think we're a brain that has to work. We're more than that. So that's the top of the tree. Nutrition, movement, sleep, detoxification, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. We know that all 5 of these areas of health work in concert. Together, they are more than the sum of the parts. We cannot just do any one of them and expect to live healthfully, to expect to live as long as possible and full of vitality. We need them all to work in concert, in balance, so that again, our hormones balance, our metabolism is raised and held up, and we're moving things through. We're light of being. The roots of the tree that support these branches include mindfulness. For us, it does tie to the mental health, but it's really the feedback loop that we need to build into our way of living, our being of living, so that we notice things, that we become curious about ourselves and what we're choosing or not choosing, or how we're feeling when we do something or when we don't do it. This allows us to become present moment to moment in our living so that we live it fully. We live it from choice. We live it from a place of freedom. We live it from a place of learning rather than shoulds or performance. Mindfulness in chewing our food so that we savor it and we get the best digestion. Mindfulness in noticing how our body feels when we are moving our body. Noticing what it feels like to fill our lungs fully. Mindfulness when we're lying in bed wondering why we can't sleep. What did we do before bed? What is going on in the thought processes of our mind? What have we not let go of so that we can drop and surrender into sleep? Mindfulness is at the root of all change. Mindfulness is being attentive to what is going on within and outside in the present moment so that we're fully alive, fully engaged, and connected. Tribe. Being Homo sapiens, being mammals, we are wired for belonging. We are not solo agents. Even though our society is very individualistic and supports everything about the self, we are genetically wired to belong. This has been going on for us for most of the last 200,000 years. We lived in small tribal groups. We lived in small farming villages. Even when we moved to the city to work in the industrial age, we still had the different ages of our families together. We lived in a house with our elders and maybe our cousins, and we had enough other people there to support child rearing and cooking and the domestic chores and even social emotional support. But very recently in our human storyline, we started to move away from our extended families and live alone and live isolated. And even more recently with the technology we're using, we're even more self-absorbed and more separated from each other. Even though we have at our fingertips the contact points to more people around the world than would ever be possible to dream of 100 years ago. The depth of contact is what's missing. The depth of support and reliance and interdependence is what's missing. So tribe is something that we believe is important. And when we run our programs, we limit our groups to a size of 16. And we've experimented with groups larger than that, and they fractionalize. But that small group of individuals on a journey together, a pilgrimage to health together in our programs, they end up bonding and they feel supported. And that support is very, very emotional, very, very intrinsic to our emotional health. So we definitely include it in our programs, and we believe it's something that all of us need to include in our lives. We know from studying centenarians that the people who live the longest on the planet also have a strong social support system. The last root of our tree that supports balanced health is nature. Both of these things we've been genetically wired for. Both of these qualities of living have been the majority of our genetic composition for our time on the planet. For the majority of the time on the planet, human beings have lived intrinsically connected to nature. Our senses are wired to belong in nature. We find peace and joy in nature. Our hormones balance in nature. It's actually our original home, and we believe it still is our true home. And so spending time in nature whenever possible is so important for balancing hormones, for bringing peace to mind and body, for bringing joy into our life. When we hear birdsong and we see butterflies and we smell wildflowers, when we feel the breeze on our skin, these are what we're alive for. These sensations, these connections to the larger world are what we're wired for. So all of our programs include nature. We immerse in nature. We nature bathe because we know how potent it is to bring balance. So this is our tree of health. And again, it's integrated. It's incorporated. Each one of these things ties to the other in a way where the whole brings far more to us as an individual and a collective than any one branch or root ever could. I hope this gives you an understanding of our perspective, and you can see how holistic it is. And you can see that it's also grounded in science. We have a white paper on everything that we offer. We don't believe in following fads. We wait, we watch, we see if it resonates, and we also consider the past. We look anthropologically at how people have lived over different epochs of time, and how did they sleep, how did they eat, how did they move, how did they detoxify. And we weigh what is coming out in research now against the resonance of how humans have lived in the past, and then we pick the correct things from our perspective that weave together into this whole in order to bring balance and vitality for our lives for as long as possible. Wishing you well. Thanks for listening.